It's English Rewired podcast, where English gets easier, one fun episode at a time.
Hey there, English learners. Welcome back to English Rewired. I'm Sarah, and today we're diving into something that practically every English learner has wondered about at some point. What's my actual English level? Now, I know this might seem like a simple question, but trust me, it's way more complex and interesting than you might think. You know, just yesterday I got an email from Maria in Spain who said, "Sarah, I can watch Netflix shows without subtitles, but I freeze up completely in job interviews. What level am I?" And honestly, that's such a perfect example of why testing your English level isn't just about taking a quick online quiz and getting a neat little label. So today we're going to explore this together. We'll look at what English levels actually mean, how to realistically assess where you are right now, and most importantly, how to use that information to improve faster. I've got some practical exercises we'll do together, some real-world scenarios to consider, and I promise by the end of this episode, you'll have a much clearer picture of not just where you are, but where you're headed. Let's start with the basics. When we talk about English levels, we're usually referring to the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages, or CEFR. Now, don't worry if that sounds intimidating. It's actually quite logical once you understand it. The CEFR gives us 6 levels: A1, A2, B1, B2, C1, and C2. Think of A1 as your first steps into English. You can say hello, ask for directions, maybe order coffee. A2 is where you can have simple conversations about familiar topics. B1 is that breakthrough moment where you can actually express opinions and deal with most situations you'd encounter while traveling. B2 is where many of you probably are, or want to be. You can discuss abstract topics, understand complex texts, and interact with native speakers fairly naturally. Then we have C1, which is advanced proficiency. You can use English flexibly and effectively for social, academic, and professional purposes. And C2? That's near native level. You can understand virtually everything and express yourself spontaneously and precisely. But here's where it gets interesting, and this is something I really want you to understand. These levels aren't like climbing a ladder where each step is the same height. The jump from B2 to C1 is massive compared to going from A1 to A2. And more importantly, you might be at different levels in different skills. This brings me to something crucial that most English learners don't realize. Your English level isn't just one number or a letter. You have 4 different skills: listening, reading, speaking, and writing, and you can be at completely different levels in each one. I remember working with David from Germany, who could read academic papers in English with ease, solid C1 reading level. But put him in a casual conversation about sports, and he'd struggle with basic B1 speaking. Meanwhile, I know Anna from Brazil who can chat naturally about anything. Her speaking is definitely B2, but ask her to write a formal email, and suddenly she's back at A2 level. This is totally normal. In fact, it's the norm rather than the exception. So when someone asks you, "What's your English level?" the honest answer is probably something like, "Well, my listening is around B2, my reading is B1, my speaking varies between A2 and B1 depending on the topic, and my writing is probably A2. Let's start testing your skills, beginning with listening. Now, I want you to think about your listening abilities in different contexts. Can you understand me right now as I speak at a natural pace? That's a good sign you're at least at B1 level for listening to clear, structured speech. But listening isn't just about understanding podcasts or lessons. Real listening ability means you can handle different accents, background noise, fast speech, and casual conversation. So ask yourself, can you watch English movies without subtitles and understand the main plot? Can you follow a group conversation where people interrupt each other? Can you understand regional accents or people who speak quickly? Here's a practical test you can do right now. After this podcast, find a random YouTube video, maybe a vlog or an interview, something unscripted and natural. Watch 5 minutes without subtitles. If you understand about 90% of what's being said, you're probably at B2 level. If you get the main ideas but miss a lot of details, you're likely at B1. If you're struggling to follow along at all, you might be at A2, and that's perfectly fine. It just means you know where to focus your efforts. Now, let's talk about reading. This is often where learners feel most confident because you can take your time, look up words, and reread passages. But true reading proficiency is about much more than just understanding individual words. B1 level reading means you can understand straightforward factual texts on familiar topics. Think news articles about topics you know, simple stories, or blog posts about hobbies. B2 reading means you can handle longer, more complex texts, understand implicit meaning, and follow detailed instructions or arguments. Here's your reading challenge. Find an article from a major English news website about a topic you're not familiar with. Not sports if you love sports, not technology if you work in tech, something outside your comfort zone. Read it once, without looking up any words. Then ask yourself, could I explain this article to a friend? Did I understand not just what happened, but why it matters? If yes, you're likely at B2 or above. If you got the basic facts but missed the nuances, you're probably at B1. Speaking is where most learners feel the most vulnerable, and I get it. When you're speaking, you can't go back and edit, you can't look up words, and you have to think on your feet. But that's exactly what makes it such a good measure of your true English ability. Let me give you some realistic benchmarks. A1 speakers can introduce themselves and ask basic questions. A2 speakers can describe their background, immediate environment, and matters of immediate need. B1 speakers, and this is a big leap, can deal with most situations while traveling, can describe experiences and events, and can give brief explanations for opinions and plans. B2 speaking is where you can interact with native speakers with a degree of fluency that makes regular conversation possible without strain for either party. You can present clear, detailed descriptions on a wide range of subjects and can explain a viewpoint giving advantages and disadvantages. But here's what I want you to really think about. Fluency isn't just about not pausing or saying, True fluency at the B2 level means you can repair communication breakdowns, you can paraphrase when you don't know a word, and you can keep a conversation going even when you're discussing unfamiliar topics. Writing is interesting because it's often the skill that develops last, but it's also the one that shows your true grasp of English structure and vocabulary. When you write, you have time to think, but you also have to organize your thoughts clearly and use appropriate language for your audience. A2 writing means you can write short, simple notes and messages, basic personal letters, and simple descriptions. B1 writing means you can write simple connected text on familiar topics, personal letters describing experiences, and basic instructions. B2 writing is where you can write clear, detailed text on a wide range of subjects, can write essays or reports developing an argument, and can write letters highlighting the personal significance of events. You can vary your vocabulary and sentence structure to avoid repetition. Here's a writing test you can do. Set a timer for 20 minutes and write about this topic. Describe a problem in your city and suggest solutions. Don't worry about perfect grammar. Just focus on clearly expressing your ideas. When you're done, read it back. Did you develop your ideas logically? Did you use a variety of sentence structures? Could someone who doesn't know your city understand both the problem and your solutions? If yes, you're probably at B2 level for writing. Now, let's talk about grammar and vocabulary because these are the building blocks that support all four skills. But here's something important. Perfect grammar doesn't equal a high level, and advanced vocabulary doesn't automatically make you fluent. At B1 level, you should be comfortable with all the basic tenses: present, past, future, present perfect. You should be able to use conditionals, make comparisons, and express opinions. Your vocabulary should include about 2,000 to 3,000 words, which sounds like a lot, but it's actually the minimum you need for basic communication. B2 level grammar includes more complex structures like passive voice, reported speech, and advanced conditionals. You should be able to use modal verbs naturally and understand the difference between formal and informal language. Vocabulary-wise, you're looking at 4,000 to 6,000 words, including more abstract concepts and specialized terms. But here's the key point. It's not about knowing every grammar rule or having a huge vocabulary. It's about being able to use what you know effectively. I'd rather see a student who uses simple grammar correctly and communicates clearly than someone who tries to use complex structures but makes errors that confuse the meaning. This brings me to something really important that formal tests often miss: context. Your English level can change dramatically depending on the situation. You might be confident discussing your job, but struggle talking about emotions. You might understand academic texts, but get lost in casual conversation full of slang and idioms. I call this situational proficiency, and it's why I always tell learners to think about their English level in terms of specific contexts. For example, I'm B2 level when discussing business topics, but probably A2 when talking about cooking or sports. This isn't a failure, it's normal. Even native speakers have stronger vocabulary in some areas than others. The key is recognizing these gaps and working on them strategically. If you need English for work, focus on professional communication. If you want to make friends, work on casual conversation skills. Let me share some common mistakes I see when people try to assess their own English level. The first big one is comparing yourself to other learners instead of to the actual standards. Just because you're the best English speaker in your class doesn't mean you're at an advanced level. Another mistake is overestimating your level based on passive skills. You might understand B2 level texts when reading, but that doesn't mean you can produce B2 level speech or writing. Passive understanding is always higher than active production. I also see people underestimating their abilities because they focus too much on their mistakes. If you can communicate effectively despite making some grammar errors, you might be at a higher level than you think. Communication isn't about perfection. It's about getting your message across clearly. And here's a big one: confusing confidence with competence. Some learners are very confident but make significant errors, while others are quite skilled but lack confidence. True assessment requires looking at actual performance, not just how you feel about your English. Let's talk about something that affects most of you listening: the intermediate plateau. This is where you feel stuck at B1 or B2 level, and progress seems to slow down dramatically. You can handle most everyday situations, but you don't feel like you're improving much anymore. This plateau is real, and it's frustrating, but it's also completely normal. At intermediate level, you're no longer learning basic structures. You're refining your usage, expanding your vocabulary, and developing more sophisticated communication skills. This takes time, and progress is less obvious than when you first started learning. The key is to recognize that at intermediate level, your goals should change. Instead of focusing on learning new grammar rules, focus on using what you know more naturally and accurately. Instead of just increasing your vocabulary, work on using words more precisely and appropriately. Let's do a practical exercise together. I want you to think about a typical day in your life and honestly assess your English ability in different situations. First, imagine you're ordering food at a restaurant. Can you ask questions about ingredients, make special requests, and handle unexpected situations like them being out of what you wanted? If you can do this comfortably, you're probably at least B1 level for speaking. Now, imagine you're reading instructions for assembling furniture. Can you follow complex, multi-step instructions with technical vocabulary? Can you understand warnings and safety information? If yes, your reading is likely B1 or above. Think about watching a movie with friends. Can you understand not just the dialogue, but also catch jokes, understand references, and follow rapid exchanges between characters? This suggests B2 level listening or higher. Finally, imagine writing an email to complain about a service. Can you explain the problem clearly, express your feelings appropriately, and suggest solutions? Can you adjust your tone to be firm but polite? This indicates B2 level writing skills. In today's world, we also need to consider digital literacy as part of English proficiency. Can you navigate English websites efficiently? Can you understand and use English social media? Can you follow online tutorials or participate in video calls? These digital skills are becoming increasingly important, and they often require a different type of English proficiency. You need to understand abbreviated text, visual cues, and navigate different platforms. If you can do this confidently, it's a good sign that your practical English level is quite solid. Something that formal tests often miss is cultural understanding. True English proficiency isn't just about grammar and vocabulary, it's about understanding context, implied meaning, and cultural references. For example, if someone says that's interesting in a flat tone, do you understand they probably disagree with you? If you hear we should grab coffee sometime, do you know this might just be a polite way to end a conversation, not a genuine invitation? This cultural competence is often what separates intermediate from advanced learners. You might have perfect grammar, but if you miss social cues or cultural references, you'll struggle in real-world situations. Let's talk about something many of you are dealing with: the difference between professional and social English. You might be very comfortable in work meetings but struggle at social gatherings, or vice versa. Professional English tends to be more structured and formal. There are clear rules, more predictable vocabulary, and specific formats for things like emails and presentations. Social English is more fluid, includes more slang and idioms, and requires understanding of humor and casual conversation patterns. Both are important, but they require different skills. If you need English for work, focus on professional communication first. If you want to make friends or feel more integrated into English-speaking communities, prioritize social English. Now, let's talk about how your learning strategies should change based on your level. If you're at A1 or A2, focus on building your foundation. Learn high-frequency vocabulary, master basic grammar patterns, and get lots of input through simple materials. At B1 level, you should start focusing more on communication strategies. Learn how to paraphrase when you don't know a word, how to ask for clarification, and how to keep conversations going. Start consuming more authentic materials like news articles and podcasts. B2 learners should work on fluency and accuracy. Practice speaking about abstract topics. Work on writing more sophisticated texts, and start paying attention to style and register. You should also focus on expanding your vocabulary in specific areas of interest. Your English level isn't just about ability, it's also about motivation and goals. Someone motivated to reach C1 level for academic purposes will progress differently than someone who just wants B1 level for travel. Be honest about your goals. If you want to work in an English-speaking environment, you probably need at least B2 level. If you want to study at an English-speaking university, you're looking at C1 level. If you just want to enjoy English media and have basic conversations, B1 might be perfectly adequate. I want to address some common frustrations I hear from learners. I've been studying for years, but I'm still not fluent. First, define what fluency means to you. If it means never making mistakes, then even native speakers aren't fluent. If it means communicating effectively in most situations, you might be closer than you think. I understand everything when I read, but I can't speak. This is normal. Reading is a passive skill, speaking is active. They develop at different rates. Focus on speaking practice, not just input. I freeze up in conversations even though I know the words. This is often about confidence and practice, not ability. Your level might be higher than you think, you just need more opportunities to use what you know. Many learners get stuck because they're perfectionists. They want to reach C2 level before they feel comfortable using English. But here's the truth. You don't need perfect English to communicate effectively. B2 level is sufficient for most real-world situations. Focus on communication, not perfection. Native speakers make mistakes, use simple vocabulary, and sometimes struggle to express complex ideas. The goal isn't to sound like a textbook, it's to communicate clearly and confidently. Based on your self-assessment, you should create a personal learning plan. If your listening is weaker than your reading, focus on audio materials. If your speaking lags behind your other skills, prioritize conversation practice. Set specific, measurable goals. Instead of improve my English, try be able to give a 5-minute presentation about my job or read one English novel this month. These concrete goals will help you track your progress more effectively. While self-assessment is valuable, formal tests like IELTS, TOEFL, or Cambridge exams can provide objective feedback. These tests are standardized, so they give you a clear benchmark against international standards. However, remember that test scores don't tell the whole story. You might perform better or worse on test day due to nerves, and tests don't always reflect real-world communication ability. Use them as one tool among many, not as the final word on your English ability. Your English level isn't static. It should be improving over time. I recommend doing a comprehensive self-assessment every 3 months. Record yourself speaking, keep writing samples, and track what you can understand in different media. Create a simple progress log. Note new vocabulary you've learned, grammar structures you're now comfortable with, and situations where you feel more confident. This positive reinforcement will help you stay motivated. Don't assess your English in isolation. Get feedback from English-speaking friends, join conversation groups, or work with a tutor. Others can often spot improvements or areas for development that you might miss. Ask specific questions. Did you understand my main point? What grammar mistakes did I make? How was my pronunciation? General feedback like, your English is good, isn't very helpful for improvement. Everyone has bad English days. You might feel like you're at B2 level one day and A2 the next. This is normal and often relates to factors like tiredness, stress, or lack of recent practice. Don't let temporary setbacks discourage you. Your English level is your consistent ability over time, not your performance on your worst day. Keep practicing, stay positive, and remember that language learning is a marathon, not a sprint. As English continues to evolve, so does what it means to be proficient. Global English includes many varieties and accents. Focus on clear communication rather than sounding like a particular type of native speaker. Technology is also changing how we use English. Consider skills like understanding different accents in video calls, writing concise messages, and navigating English digital environments as part of your overall proficiency. So what should you do after this podcast? First, do an honest assessment of your 4 skills using the guidelines we've discussed. Be specific about your strengths and weaknesses. Second, identify your priority areas. Where do you need English most? Focus your energy on those skills first. Third, set realistic goals. Don't try to improve everything at once. Pick 1 or 2 areas and work on them systematically. Remember, language learning is as much about confidence as it is about knowledge. You might know more than you think you do. The key is creating opportunities to use what you know in supportive environments. Join online communities, find conversation partners, or start a blog in English. The more you use English, the more accurate your self-assessment will become, and the more confident you'll feel. I want to end with this thought. Your English level is not a judgment of your worth or intelligence. It's simply a measure of where you are right now in your language journey. Every level has value, and every improvement, no matter how small, is worth celebrating. Some of you might discover you're at a higher level than you thought. Others might realize you have more work to do than you expected. Both realizations are valuable because they help you move forward more effectively. As we wrap up today's episode, I want you to remember that knowing your English level is just the beginning. The real value comes from using this knowledge to guide your learning and practice. Keep practicing, stay curious, and most importantly, use your English. The best way to improve is to communicate, make mistakes, learn from them, and keep going. Thank you for joining me today on English Rewired. I hope this episode has helped you understand not just where you are in your English journey, but also where you're going. Remember, the goal isn't perfection. It's communication, connection, and continuous improvement. Until next time, keep learning, keep practicing, and keep rewiring your English. Take care.